Hello, welcome back, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the studio and to introduce to you Dr. Richard Elofer from the, let me get this right, Richard, the World Jewish Adventist Friendship Center.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that right? Now, you're based in Paris, is that right?
I am based in Paris. I was based 15 years in Israel because I was a president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church there. But 2 years ago, I got this position full-time. Then I decided to go back to Paris, where my family is.
So over the years, Dr. Elofer, there's been a lot of tension between Christians and Jews. And there's a lot of history behind that. Sadly, on the Christian side, you know, pogroms and all sorts of persecution. But you're now involved in a Jewish Adventist Friendship Center. What does that involve? What bridges are you trying to build?
Because when we look at the Bible, we see that at the end of the time we have to bring back the Jews to Jesus.
Right.
And when we look at the history, we discover that in the first century, the Jews believed easily to Jesus. Thousands and thousands of Jews. In fact,
Jesus was a Jew. His disciples
Jesus was a Jew.
It was a Jewish movement.
And it was a Jewish movement. All the first believers were Jews. But in fact, with the history and what you have mentioned from this conflict between Christians and Jews, we discover now the biggest obstacle between Jews and Jesus is the church. And that's why we have to work first in reconciliation between the church and Israel if we want to help the Jews to believe again in Jesus.
So what does that involve? What does reconciliation involve exactly?
Reconciliation means, in fact, to comfort the people of Israel, to be on their side, to be ready to support them and to help them when they have difficult time. And that's why I preach in every church where I go this verse from Isaiah 40 verse 1, comfort, comfort my people, says your God.
Now, Seventh-day Adventists in particular, I mean, often Seventh-day Adventists are accused of being a bit Jewish because of the seventh-day Sabbath, basically. Are there other crossovers between Adventist doctrine and practice and Jewish doctrine and practice that make it easier for an Adventist to connect with the Jew?
In fact, we have to remember that all what we receive as Christian came from the Jewish people.
True.
We have the same God. We have the same Bible. We have the same hope in the resurrection and the kingdom of God and the Messiah. We have the same hope in the Messiah. And in fact, the Adventists have been a little bit further because they have accepted the full Bible completely with the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. Then, for example, we have the same lifestyle together with the Jews.
In terms of clean and unclean meats?
Unclean meats and things like that.
Now, I understand that in some parts of the world, Dr. Elofer, there are actually what you might call Christian synagogues.
We call that today Jewish Adventist congregation.
Okay.
We are very careful to call that synagogue because, in fact, the word synagogue is used by the Jewish people.
Okay.
And we don't want to be to replace Israel.
Sure.
We don't want to be in this replacement theology.
Okay. In some Jewish Adventist congregations, if I've got the terminology right, you use, or some of those congregations use a very Jewish form of worship, even though they are worshipping Jesus the Messiah, Yeshua.
Because in fact we would like in our congregation to respect the Jewish identity. We use, for example, the shal of prayer. I bring one of these shal of prayer here with me to show you what is that. You have certainly seen Jews with this shal of prayer.
This is the prayer shawl.
Yeah.
And what does this say on here?
That is a blessing which say, praise are you, Lord, our God, King of the universe, who commanded us to bear the tzitzit. And the tzitzit are the tassels.
Oh, the tassels. Okay.
Yeah, because in fact, what is written in the Bible in Numbers chapter 15, from the verse 30, it is not written to have a prayer shawl. It is just say we must have tassel on our
the four
clothes,
corners
on
of
the
your
four, yeah, and because the Jews in the time of the Bible had that all the time on their clothes, on their jacket, because a tailor made that for them. They were Jewish tailor, but today not anymore. And that's why the Jews say to follow the commandment of God, we have at least to have the tassels for the prayer time.
Is there a risk, Dr. Elofer, that when you involve these sorts of parts of worship, that it becomes a legalistic thing?
What is the meaning of legalistic? To be legalistic. That is the main point. Is to be legalistic is to follow the law of God. That is not the meaning of legalist.
No.
The legalists are people who say, I keep the Sabbath in order to be saved.
Yeah.
Salvation through the law. Salvation through the work. And that is legalism. But when we have this shall of prayer, prayer shall, it is not in fact to be saved. That has nothing to do with salvation. And because we want the Jews to be comfortable in our worship, then we say to them, you can have the prayer shawl if you want. You can have the small hat, which is the kippah on your head, if you want.
Yes.
But nobody is obliged to have the kippah. You understand?
Yes.
Everyone is free.
And it's not something that a congregation is going to enforce on its members?
Absolutely not.
Wow.
Absolutely.
One thing I find really exciting, Dr. Elofer, is that in New Zealand, in Wellington, there is right now one of these Jewish Adventist congregations.
Yes.
So right here in our part of the world.
Yeah, we have started this Jewish Adventist congregation about 1 year ago. And that's why I came back this year too for this ministry, and especially because they would like to start now new Jewish Adventist congregation in Rotorua and in Auckland. And
what about Sydney? There are a lot of Jewish people here in Sydney.
Yeah, now I am in Sydney and in Australia because I think we have to start a Jewish Adventist congregation in Sydney and in Melbourne. And I have already few names of people who are interested to start this ministry.
Wow, that's good to hear.
But we have to know that this ministry doesn't start like that. It takes time.
Like I say, reconciliation, building relationships, friendship.
Yeah, and we have to train our members to have this friendship.
Well, just before we finish, just quickly, you come yourself from a Jewish family, born in Morocco. What was the thing that tipped the balance for you to accept Jesus?
Oh, in fact, it was when I met some people who were Seventh-day Adventists, and I was very surprised because I didn't know any Christian who was keeping the Sabbath and has some similarities like that with the Jews. And then I started to read a little bit more the Bible and the prophecy, and I discovered by myself that Yeshua could be the Messiah described in the Hebrew Bible.
The power of those prophecies was important for you.
Very important, yes.
Now, there might be some of our viewers, Dr. Elofer, who are interested in knowing more about the World Jewish Adventist Friendship Center. Have you got a website people can visit?
Yes, of course, Jewish Adventist, one word, jewishadventist.org.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, and I produce a newsletter every week. People can just subscribe.
You can sign up for that. Is in English?
English, French, Russian, and Dutch.
And Dutch, there you go, four
languages.
So yeah, that website's right there on your screen. Check that out. And thank you so much, Dr. Richard Elofer, for your time
Thank you for your invitation.
Not a problem. And may God continue to bless your ministry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you.
We'll be back straight after the break.